Have you ever been faced with a situation so obvious for the eye to see, so clear-cut, that you couldn't have been mistaken about it, only to later find out that what seemed like a concrete reality is only a narrow slice of the truth? This is what our emotions can do. They take a moment, a fragment, a feeling, and they make it the whole truth, not only distorting what we see, but deciding our thoughts for us. This video is an exploration of how feeling hijacks thought and what you can potentially do about it. Emotional reasoning is one thing I often encounter whenever I'm discussing things with people and they become unreasonable just because they feel stuff. And apparently a psychiatrist by the name of Aaron Beck arrived at the same observation in the 1970s, coining the term emotional reasoning, which describes the tendency to believe that things are true simply because they feel true, even when the evidence points to the contrary. It's the mind's attempt to reason what we feel, who caused the feeling, and how do we escape it. But unlike how a doctor approaches a diagnosis with systemic reasoning, which involves evidence, analysis, and testing, emotional reasoning starts with an unchecked feeling as the basis for our approach. For example, if I feel disrespected in your company, my first assumption is that you must have done something to disrespect me. Instead of ever questioning if my feeling was misplaced, I search for reasons that justify its validity. Here's another example. You feel a little lonely, so you check your DMs. Wow, not a single message? Alice usually talks to me by now. I guess you already found somebody more interesting to talk to. It always ends up like this. Why does no one like me? Why am I so replaceable? In this example, even with complete lack of evidence, you're entirely focused on assumptions that align with and confirm your negative emotion and self-perception, while completely discarding from your focus all the other plausible scenarios which could serve to explain why your DMs are empty. The only real facts we observe here are, there are no new messages, and Alice didn't text you even though she often does at this hour. Any observation beyond that is neither factual nor true, merely a belief or an assumption. And while having to make assumptions is an inescapable function of our human lives, since we can't glimpse all the knowledge required for certainty, assumptions that venerate our fleeting emotions only exist to justify what we feel, not to unravel the truth of a situation. A self-fulfilling prophecy is when our beliefs about reality shape our actions in ways that make those beliefs come true. We all experience this effect in one context or another. That scenario of being so afraid of losing something, so you hold onto it so tightly, only to end up breaking it or pushing it away. So fixated on preventing an outcome that you end up creating it yourself. A classic example you've probably seen in a TV show is that of the jealous girlfriend who feels her boyfriend must be cheating on her, and she keeps subconsciously acting on that assumption, digging through his phone, glancing at his texts, watching his every move, searching for anything she can find to prove her feeling correct, which eventually leads her to become emotionally unstable, distrustful, paranoid, and even insufferable to her boyfriend, erasing many of the good qualities that made her desirable in his eyes to begin with, eventually leading him to create distance or even throw himself into the arms of another woman just to escape her. So then the relationship crumbles and the prophecy fulfilled. The funny thing about this self-fulfilling prophecy is the person often thinks that the outcome confirms their initial prediction. The girlfriend might say, "See? I knew he was cheating." But in reality, it was her own actions, driven by emotional reasoning, that caused the relationship to crumble. She may convince herself that this self-inflicted collapse was inevitable, mistaking her distrust for wisdom. In doing so, she fortifies a mindset where feelings dictate reality, allowing fear and insecurity to masquerade as intuition. But the more she clings to this false certainty, the less she questions the destructive patterns shaping her relationships, ensuring that history will repeat itself. If she had approached these suspicions with healthy skepticism and not firm belief, that outcome may have never come to pass. Whenever you feel the emotional craving, it's like entering a mind state of hyperfixation, where only this sensation exists in your mind. Once you've emotionally reasoned enough about why you should follow your feelings on a matter, a habit will be trained, where you start to skip reason entirely, creating a direct line between impulse and action. Like an itch you can't ignore and impulsively move to scratch away without notice. And why should you pause to question it when it feels so natural and automatic to obey? It's staggering to shed light on the amount of actions we each impulsively take in the span of a single day, without awareness or second thought. This category of things usually includes base instincts and small harmless things, yet sometimes the line between impulsiveness and compulsion begins to blur. Like when I hear a notification sound, and immediately open my app on my phone to check what happened. That's one of those impulses which most of us are now conditioned to have. But what about the other times when I simply feel a flash of boredom or loneliness and reach for my phone even without notification, without purpose, even when I previously decided I wouldn't? I still find myself scrolling aimlessly, thinking, why am I even doing this? Some of us take emotional reasoning to a whole other level, unwittingly constructing their entire perception of reality with it. And once enough of a person's deep core beliefs become the product of a lie, no amount of logic or evidence can penetrate the emotional wall they've built around their worldview. They would defend their truth to the grave. An example that comes to mind is the belief in flat Earth. Many flat earthers probably arrive at their belief through blanket mistrust of authority, governments, and scientists. Fueled by confirmation bias, they cherry-pick the facts or invent them to rationalize their position, with complete or partial disregard to scientific evidence, observation, or reality. Although my favorite examples of this delusion are the narcissists, or those with main character syndrome, thinking they are the main focus of the universe and everybody else are just supporting cast to their main character's journey. Or the entitlement of a modern woman, who believes she is owed everything and owes nothing in return, that even if she is rejected for such unattractive behavior, she interprets that as proof that men are just intimidated by a confident woman like me. When emotional reasoning goes repeatedly unchecked, hell, even affirmed, it leads to a fracture in shared common sense, where the arbiter of truth is no longer factual data or observable reality, but to each person their own bubble of distorted truth, aiding the disconnect in the fabric of social bonds and the rise of egoism. A world where individuals are encased in the hard shell of selfishness, entitlement, and delusion, where true depth is all but lost. I believe that every human being acts selfishly, whether that means taking advantage of others for personal gain, or displaying kindness and generosity. In all cases, the act is rewarded by some form of gratification. This gratification doesn't necessarily come from external validation. Sometimes it comes from the satisfaction of living up to your own ideals. We experience the world solely through our own minds and bodies. Emotions are deeply personal, and when multiple people share the same experience, they often walk away with completely different feelings about it. This happens because the chain of causality leading to our emotional experiences is intertwined with countless hidden and complex processes. Our past experiences, our expectations, and most importantly, our beliefs about ourselves. And this is where self-centeredness and emotional reasoning collide. Because we are trapped in our own perspectives, it becomes easy to assume that what we feel is not only valid, but universally true. When feelings become the lens through which we interpret reality, we begin to avoid discomfort, even when that discomfort is necessary for growth. Painful truths, criticism, and hardship all become things to escape rather than confront. And so, instead of facing reality, we build a mental fortress of self-validation, surrounding ourselves with narratives that protect us from pain. We observe this type of thinking oftentimes at the end of a romantic relationship, where instead of recognizing your own involvement in the cascade of events leading the relationship to ruin, you might dump the entire blame on the other person, justifying your own bad behavior as instigated by them, that you had no choice, so you had no fault. This is how people become trapped in comforting lies. The more we avoid discomfort and accountability, the more fragile we become. The less we are willing to question ourselves, the more disconnected from reality we get. And before long, we are living in a fragile fantasy where the truth is mangled to fit our emotions, instead of our emotions being adjusted to fit the truth. The irony is that the very pain we try so hard to escape is often the only thing which can set us free. Yet we choose to remain prisoners of our own comforts. Obsession is what happens when emotional reasoning sinks its teeth into something and refuses to let go. It convinces us that our feelings aren't just real, they are urgent, absolute, and inescapable. When love turns into fixation, when desire warps into desperation, we don't just want, we need. If you've ever been consumed by thoughts of someone, whether out of love or jealousy or just fear of losing them, you know the feeling. They become the center of gravity in your mind, pulling everything into their orbit. Your food doesn't taste the same, your entertainments feel hollow, and every quiet moment gets devoured by thoughts of them. You tell yourself, if I could just have them, just understand what they're thinking, just make them see, then everything will be fixed. But that's the irony. We are condemned to need what we can't acquire and be bored with it if we do. The deeper into the spiral we go, the more we distort reality. A delayed text feels like a rejection. A passing comment is a cryptic hint. We rewrite every interaction to fit the growing story in our minds, the one where our survival itself hinges upon them. And once obsession takes hold, it's not just a passing thought. It's an invasion, a hostile takeover of your mind. You know you should focus on something else. You know this is unhealthy, but even the truth can't set you free. You can see what is happening, but you are helpless against it. You tell yourself, stop thinking about this, move on, but your body doesn't listen. Your mind has already made its decision long without you. Your stomach clenches at the sound of their name. Your heart pounds at the sight of a notification, even when it's not from them. You lie awake at night, replaying every interaction, every word, every silence, trying to decode the meaning that was never there. There is no escape. They even haunt your dreams. You recognize the illusion, the false certainty, the way your own mind is leading you down in circles, and yet you still feel it. And that's the cruelest part, because logic has no power here. Every attempt to free yourself ends in failure, and every attempt to take control is thwarted, trapped in a chokehold, forced to witness your own collapse. I think this is the most torturous aspect of our humanity. showing how truly powerless we can be. The only solution seems to be to welcome the suffering, endure, and distance ourselves from any reminder of the object of our obsession. Let time force the memories to fade, and so will your obsession fade with them. Imagine this. You send a message to a friend, and hours pass by without a reply. At first, it's just an observation, but then the silence starts to feel heavy. Did I say something wrong? Are they ignoring me? Have I done something to upset them? The longer the wait, the more your mind fills in the blanks. And before you know it, you are not just wondering, you are convinced. That creeping discomfort and the sinking feeling in your stomach start to feel like proof. And this is how your logic becomes hijacked. Your brain is wired to reason, detect problems, and look for solutions. Here, the problem is what you feel, and the assumptions are the brain's way of diagnosing the problem and looking for potential solutions for it. But in reality, it's just a false problem, because the base assumption that your thoughts spring from is flawed. It's like me asking you, why does 1 + 1 = 4? And you honestly trying to come up with reasons to explain why that even works, instead of questioning the premise that my question to you was built upon. Plus, those feelings you've got. When your friend failed to reply, they say nothing about them. They only speak about you, your insecurities, your desires, your fears. Remember that not every event that happens in the world refers to you in some way, and that other people are not simply cardboard cutouts who only exist to make your reality more believable. The more we step outside ourselves, the more we can clearly see, not just the world, but our place in it. The challenge is learning to separate what we feel from what we know, and training the skills necessary to zoom out and see the larger picture on display, where what we feel on the matter is only one of many possible interpretations for what actually is happening. If you've made it till the end, thank you so much for watching. If you've enjoyed the art, or if you've enjoyed the narration or the thoughts that are involved, I wrote the script, put my thoughts together as best as I can present them. I didn't know which direction to take it really, because I'm not really good at speaking to an audience. I usually speak like to just people one-on-one, mostly that's my preference. But I think there's some good thoughts to share, and that I just wanted to start. I just wanted to do it, even though I'm a perfectionist and I wanted things to be perfect. But I'm like, if I want things to be perfect and I don't have the knowledge necessary to know all the things involved to make it perfect, I just have to start trying to think less and do more. Please leave a comment below with your feedback, and leave a like, please, if you've enjoyed it. I would love to know what you thought. Yeah, see you in the next video.